end of November market stats.
Yeah, so we're going to go over the end of the month stats and kind of let you know how things are going.
Okay, in addition to the end of November 2023 stats, I also want to go over what we actually do to sell property. Well, first list property and sell it, because when properties right now are sitting a little bit and they're not necessarily...
Well, I think everybody's still in that mindset of a year and a half, 2 years ago, where you list a house and it sells in 4 days, and that's just not the market we're in anymore. And so you're finding that some of the sellers are getting a little bit anxious, like, well, wait a second, we're a month and a half or 2 months into this and my property hasn't sold. And you also have to keep in mind too that anytime you go up above $2 or $3 million, as those prices get high, the pricing gets higher and higher, the amount of people that can afford it becomes smaller and smaller. So if you have a $10 million listing like the one you have now down in Manasota, that's not going to sell in a month or two.
Although it's possible, because the last couple down there have sold fairly quickly.
But like my guess is, I always say that like 15 or 20% of somebody's, like net worth is about what they can afford on a house. I mean, somebody's got to be worth $50-60 million. How many people are worth that? Not a lot.
I mean, you can call me.
Yeah.
If you are.
So I
don't
guess,
call him.
Don't call her. Call me. Like. And I think my point though is that things are taking longer to sell anyways, and then especially if you're going up into that higher price point. But also we're struggling a little bit on the lower price points as well.
I was just going to say, because I wanted to actually address that more.
Yeah, because like the lower price points, especially I have a condo right now where we're extremely well priced on this condo, but when you consider the interest rates, because most of the people under $500,000 are financing, and you consider HOAs, you could have purchased a $500,000 house for what this $300,000 condo is now. So it's a little bit challenging, but properties are still moving. So I think that you just have to continue to do the things that we always do, which is properly list it, properly price it, properly market it.
That is something that we say a lot, but we don't deep dive into exactly what we do, because we don't just list it on the MLS and wait for the phone to ring.
Right.
I guess we're going there first instead of stats.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, we're it's not just tossing it up.
Well, let's just talk about that before we get into the stats, right? Because this is a very critical piece of, okay, it's sitting on the market 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. What is your agent doing? I pride myself on not wanting them to even ask me on at least once a week, more like 2-3 times
statistics
a week.
Of what
updates on what I'm doing. The impressional insights for people looking online, right? Looking at coldbanker.com, coldbankerhomes.com. Like those are passive things. But I have, I think, 10 pages here. And what's in these 10 pages? It's all the things that we do before we list and to get the property listed.
Right.
So listing agreement, we have to go through that. The keys, we have to get access, showing instructions, have discussions on how they want it shown, how much access they need, or time frame they need to show property, especially if they live there, going through all the disclosures.
It's a lot, and the disclosures to me arguably is the most important thing. I mean, I'm notoriously, I'm great at writing a contract. I'm great at doing the key disclosures are critical. So like
they are.
I'm not like I write a really solid contract. I'm really great at doing this disclosures. All the other stuff, I'm kind of like, we'll figure it out. I help
you with, and we help each other. Yeah. That's why we work out well together.
Sure.
But there are so many things like, there's so many questions that we get asked as agents. So I like to be overly prepared. They'll ask for things like elevation certificate, floor plans,
surveys. Do you have a survey?
Prior survey.
Sure.
Anything and everything. Oh, with the condos right now, especially anything near the beach, within 3 miles of the beach, we need the reserve study. They need to know, is the building sound? What does the budget look like?
Right.
We are your intermediary between you and the public, you and the buyer. We need to know all of this information and digest so much information to be your right arm, basically.
Well, and I think that something else that is critically important is that, we talk, I think I say this every video that we're on, you have to have an agent that's working full time, because if they're working part time, they're not going to have the volume and understanding of like what needs to be done on every single listing. And also, they're also not going to have a volume of investors that are out there that potentially might want to purchase that property as an investment. They're not going to have your YouTube channel. You have, thousands of views every single week on your YouTube channel. So like when we shoot a video at somebody's house just to kind of present it, it's something we do for our clients. There's thousands of people that are seeing it just because we're working full time and we've developed our YouTube channels. We've shot these videos. Like there's a lot of front end work that is a huge value to somebody who's selling. Whereas if you're using a part-time agent, they generally don't even have a YouTube.
They can't do all the extra.
They can't do all the extra stuff. They don't have time. Right.
Well, here's a perfect example about the YouTube. And this is where, again, we're emphasizing the benefit to the seller, right?
Sure.
So I list the property in Manasota Key. That same week, I get a call from my YouTube from a year ago. It's over a year ago now.
Sure.
Well, that guy might be the buyer. I don't know. But it's a contact. And it's something that we both put a lot of time and effort and diligence and care in not just the video, but the way that we optimize the video, because you can do a video and nobody can find it, right?
Right.
So I'm constantly learning how to better the channel, better our presentation, get found by the right buyers, not just all the buyers, but like the right buyers for our listings, and put the two parties together. So when people say, okay, you just put it in the MLS, that couldn't be farther from the truth,
right?
Like, before you came in today, I, on all the new listings that we have, I go around and call the neighbors.
Sure.
Why do we do that?
Well, because sometimes a neighbor is like, gosh, if I could upgrade my property, the house a couple doors down is really nice. Mm-hmm. They may want to just sell their place and jump in, or they may, especially out here in Longboat Key, we find this all the time where a family will buy 2 or 3 homes next to each other. Well, they bought a house. They can afford to buy the house next door. They just don't know that it's for sale or available.
Exactly. And maybe they don't allow signs in the neighborhood, or they're not relying on the internet. Or don't know.
Well, and a lot of times one of the houses on Buttonwood that we sold, we door knocked every single house and spoke to every single neighbor. Well, one of the neighbors said, there's a physician that used to live down the road, and he's been desperately trying to find a place in here. And sure enough, they flew from Minnesota to come in and see the property.
So cool.
So you just don't we are
out there, boots on the ground, hustling. And then there's we haven't even touched on the whole global network of Coldwell Banker.
Sure.
So within that, there's like all the digital stuff that we do.
Sure.
We go and pick up the phone. We've got such great contacts within the Coldwell Banker brand. And we see every single week they post worldwide properties, like anywhere in the world, from Europe to South America and Africa. We see properties that are available within our company, and so that's a huge resource.
Well, I think that also having, you want to be with a larger brand, and at the end of the day, especially these days. But people asked me this week, I had met some potential clients, and they had said, well, gosh, we're looking at brand new condos, new construction condos, but we're thinking about just having the developer represent us. And I'm like, so basically, if there's an issue, you're going to let the developer also represent you.
Right.
And there's no comprehension behind, oh, wait a second. Yeah, there's really nobody representing me. There's nobody on my side.
And you're not getting, just so the public knows, you're not getting a discount in the price.
Not at all.
Whatsoever.
So why would you not want to have a free agent, free representation? And if something goes wrong, Coldwell Banker has in-house counsel that will represent you.
We pay for that too.
For free. So you're giving up all these opportunities for no discount.
For no good
There seems
reason.
to be this notion, well, yeah, but if I go in, maybe they'll work with me. The prices on these pre-construction condos are set. They are what they are.
Not only that, but just not to divert too much, but we can help negotiate in other ways.
Sure.
And represent, should you put these upgrades in? And is this builder even good? Or are you going to have issues down the road?
Right.
So getting back to, because the market is shifting, that's why we wanted to divert and talk about all these things, because there's at least 51 things that I do to get the property up, right? And now every week I give people a very detailed, my email is like this long with a bunch of attachments so that my clients see exactly
all the work we're doing.
And it's all super high quality photography, super high. I'm very meticulous about the wording, the way that the photos sit. Everything from the onset is really important, because again, it's a reflection of you as the owner and your property, and ultimately the price.
If you price it too high, it's not going to sell.
And not only that, and we talk about this all the time, but not just listing it, but keeping a really close eye on it.
Sure.
So like when I list a property, I probably already have like an auto search. If it's in like Emerald Harbor, for example, because we have that property listed. But so as soon as a property comes up as a competing listing or pending or sold,
we want to know
immediately.
We want to know immediately, making sure that your agent is staying on top of what's going on in those competing properties and competing property can be the day after you list, somebody may list for 150 grand less than yours. If your agent's not on top of that other property is going to sell immediately.
Yeah.
And so
your client's going to sit there wondering what's going on.
Right. Like, how did you not know that?
And it's also your competing listings that are available.
Sure.
And it's also what's not available. Like, we want the seller to be as hands-off as we can allow them to be, and getting the sign ordered and the correct sign. There's like specs on signs for different areas.
Right.
We have a whole listing concierge program. So within the listing concierge, there's like, I don't even know, 20 or 30 additional tasks that we do. This is for marketing.
Well, and a lot of it is, they're taking our high quality photos and putting them in really high quality marketing materials that are going
glossy
to be
or matte, or however we like to present. Like, there's, they give us options.
And they can be mailed to the neighbors. They can just come to us, or we're going to go knock on doors and hand deliver them. Yeah. But these are all value added things that we're doing for our clients. So, I think there always is for sellers a question mark of, okay, I'm hiring this agent. They're going to sell my property. This is, in more cases than not, it's their most expensive asset, their most valuable asset that they own. But what is this guy going to do beyond just go input some information into the computer
all day?
and sit there?
So, you have all day?
Yeah, and I don't want to kind of belabor this, because we'll sit here for 3 hours talking about this.
Because does your agent have a Google business page?
Right.
I mean, this is all exposure for you. I put every listing on my Google business page, right?
Sure.
We do professional binders. I mean, we go and look at the permits to make sure that
the permits have been closed out.
Surprises, right? So we're avoiding future obstacles. Really taking that hands-on approach is critical. Because, and not even a third way done with this. So I know he doesn't like to go into all of it because he knows how my checklists are. My checklists are really long, but it's because of where's the inventory. So I'll test you like I do every month and see.
Okay, let's see where we're at.
Okay, all right. So let's just look at October last year. We had 2.2 months of inventory. Again, just for anyone new to the channel, we're talking Sarasota County single family homes as the best gauge. Because
we try to stay with one thing, because if you start throwing condos in, it's different.
The condo market's more volatile over time, and so that's why we always just use Sarasota County single family homes. Okay. October 2022, 2.2 months of inventory, which means it'll take 2.2 months to sell off the inventory. Now, where are we at?
My guess is, it's come up a little bit. My guess you're at 3 months.
Close, 3.9.
Wow, so it's almost doubled.
This is the highest we've seen the inventory
in a while. So it's almost doubled then. So that makes sense in this, but it also, I think, timing of the we're going into the season right now. Mm-hmm. Generally, a lot of people will hold off during the summer, thinking, well, there's so many more buyers, which I don't necessarily believe is true, but I guess that makes sense. But that's a big increase.
It's a big jump in. Like, we're getting close to that equilibrium now, because the equilibrium is like 5.5, 6 months, right? So properties that have issues, like we're seeing a lot of roofs that need replacement, and those buyers they've caught on, so they're calling and saying, how old is the roof? The property could be amazing.
Before they've come to see the property, how old is the roof? I don't want to come and fall in love with this place.
Then they don't want to come see it. And I always encourage them to still come, because so as an agent, I want them to come inside the house.
Sure.
And I want them to spend as much time as possible.
Sure.
Because I want them to envision themselves in the home, love it, get attached to it.
Right.
And so when they have a question like that and they instantly want to get off the phone with you, it's hard to overcome that.
Right.
And you try to keep them on the phone, you try to get them to the house, but there's only so much in our control.
Sure.
So that's another obstacle that we have, and especially under 500 with the interest rates. And by doing all of these things that we're talking about, we're trying to overcome all that stuff through our marketing and advertising efforts.
Sure.
Okay. Closed sales, up or down?
Compared to last year, I'm gonna guess it's down.
You're pretty good. It's actually up slightly.
Okay.
It was 520 closed sales last October 2022, and we had 538. So just up
barely
3.5%.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with more inventory, you're gonna have a couple more deals that close, but at the same time, things are taking a little bit longer to sell.
Yeah.
Whereas, a year and a half ago, if I got a listing and it was properly priced, I'm like, this is gonna sell in 3-4 days, 5 days.
Minutes.
So, and sometimes, I mean, I had one that was 2 days. I mean, we were on the market for 2 days at a pretty high price point too, and it sold right away. So things are taking a bit longer.
And that's why, again, and I can't stress enough, like, you're going to hear from us at least weekly.
Right.
It's far more than that because we're texting and calling and things like that. And we're probably seeing you in person or whatever, or showing the property.
Right.
But you're going to hear from us. You're not just going to sit and wonder. And then paid in cash is up 12.3%.
That doesn't shock me. I mean, there's still a lot of cash in the market. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that most of the deals that are getting done are cash. But I will say I have a closing that should close December 11th or maybe just a touch before that. That's financed, and that's very rare for me. Like, I generally,
you poor thing.
Well, listen, I'll say it's so much easier when it's cash, but I think we are going to have to start seeing more finance deals because at the end of the day, I just don't know that this can continue with all the cash, but we'll see. I mean, you don't know.
And I actually got asked about seller financing again this week. Now, in my 21 years, I've done one
seller finance
deal, but seller finance deal.
I don't know where they're yet. Like, it has to be a really rough market, or there has to be a really big reason why that seller just like really needs to get out of the property and is willing to finance it. Generally speaking, my experience, I've never done a seller finance deal, not a single time. And even beyond that, I've never even had anybody ask.
Well, listen, so the one client or potential customer I have asked me about a property that's now pending, right? It's under contract, but he's like, well, can you help me find something else? I said, okay. So when I did his criteria, I found 12 properties. And when I clicked the seller financing option, it went to a big fat zero. And he said, well, how many of these are seller finance? And I said, well, none. But the reason I sent it to you is because most agents either are lazy, they don't know that the seller would do it. Most are not. But if you
it complicates the deal.
If he really likes the property and he's a good client, he's going to be a loyal client, I will put the work in because I know it is possible when the stars align. Now, am I going to go slave over this? No.
It's very unlikely that deal will work.
But he's coming from the West Coast mentality where that's far more common, I guess. And so he's coming in, and I'm trying to educate him. And I'm like, listen, I've been in this market a long time, and I've done one.
Right.
And I've been asked many times over my career. I mean, I wouldn't say many, but on occasion.
I've never even been asked.
I mean,
and the reason is this too. I'm very upfront with people in the sense that, like, if you're going to do that, this better be a property that nobody else is ever going to be interested in, and that's it. Like, and you can say,
agree with that.
I do. I just don't.
Listen, okay. I'm going to contradict what you just said because I just closed recently one on Manasota Key.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more about the lot on the bay side than the house.
Sure.
The house, although it could have been, it's 7555 Manasota, if you want to refer to one of the videos in my playlist. It was like an old kit house, right? But it took the right buyer. But the buyer, they were $100,000 off on the price. And they said, we'll do this deal at 1.25 if you can seller finance, it was like either 125,000 or 150.
Okay.
So my seller said, okay.
That's
and they ended up paying it off within 3 months post closing, even though it was a year seller note.
Right.
So in that case, it worked out, and I was surprised the seller went for it.
Right.
But if you don't ask, you don't get.
Fair enough, but like, I just don't. Let me say this: if I had a potential client come to me and say, I want to go buy a $500,000 or $600,000 home, but I need seller financing, I would generally say, let's not waste each other's time. Because, like, generally speaking, most people are not even going to consider that.
Well, it is true. It's going down a rabbit hole, and it is more work. And so I'm telling this buyer that, like, listen, if you're loyal and you're just going to work with me, I'm open to it. Like, you got to help me out and do some of the work too, and sort through the properties.
Right.
And I'm happy to call one or two of
right.
the ones, anyway, that's neither here nor there. But these are things that as the market changes and as inventory increases, people have to get creative.
Well, and look, this, this COVID explosion of home selling and properties transacting could also come back. I mean, in 2008, 2009, my guess is you had a whole bunch of people doing seller financing because they were like, I just need to get out of this house. I'm fine financing it and carrying the note. And so I say that all in the lens of right now. As of right now, if somebody said to me on any of my listings right now, would your sellers consider seller financing? My answer would be no. Are we done? We're done. Yeah, we're done. Like, no, they wouldn't.
Well, especially something that's newer on the market. The seller's going to be like, are you nuts?
No.
Because we have a fair amount of cash deals. And so to that point, the paid in cash is up a titch at the 247 versus 220 this time last year. I mean, we're in such a niche market too that we have second, third vacation investment homes here that a lot of these people, if they're 1031ing or they're just getting straight up cash or they're liquidating investments, like, we're so lucky to have that. I would say we are very lucky to be in the location that we are. And so obviously if I'm a seller, I'm less inclined because that's a risk. It's another risk that you're taking on that you're like, I don't know this guy from Adam. Is he going to pay this note or am I just going to
Well, and you don't know what they're, I mean, they everything may look great and be fine now, and they get cancer or somebody dies in the family or something terrible happens. And the next thing you know, and this is going to sound terrible, but the reality is all of a sudden their problem just became your problem.
Yeah.
So that's a risk. It's a risk in doing that. And there's not much that you can do to mitigate that other than roll the dice and hope it works out.
I think too that agents that got spoiled with the last couple years need to familiarize themselves with FHA and VA. And is VA assumable? Is FHA assumable? These are all things that can make or break or, put a deal together or miss a deal when you're not opening yourself up on certain properties for these kind of loans.
Well, knowing the risk on that too, if you have the seller and you're listing the property, understanding an FHA inspection is not just like a regular standard home inspection. A VA inspection, same thing. Yeah. The VA, my experience has been, because listen, I've used my VA to buy a couple properties. Like if you have a pool, that pool better be running. It's better be filled, clean. It better be working really well. And I'll tell you, my house I bought in Vegas, I bought with a VA loan. A week before closing, the VA sent somebody out to the house. The pool was green, and they're like, "Nope, you're not closing until this pool is fixed. And by the way, we're coming out to see it." And so
they do a reinspect.
So I had to get a hold of the listing agent and say, like, hey, listen, you got to go out there and get the pool cleaned up. You got to get the pool cleaned up, or else I'm not going to be able to close.
It's government. It's a government loan. They're not playing around with like the four systems of the house: the roof, plumbing, electrical. What's the fourth? HVAC. Yeah. They don't play with that. Like, those systems have to have certain number of years useful life left, and they will come back and reinspect, to your point.
Well, in the electrical, I'll tell you, if it's an older home, generally speaking, most of those electrical panels have been recalled. And if it's been recalled, they're going to make you replace it if it's a VA or FHA loan.
But you know what?
So those are things that, like, experienced agents are going to know. Okay, the house that I'm selling right now was built in 1962. Just by looking at an electrical panel, I can tell that's original or it's not. Yeah. And if it is original, I know right off the bat, there's no way that's going to fly with FHA.
And you know what? This is where I think we excel, because we not only have really good vendors, we've got a great vendor list. We can help the buyer's agent, or if we're on the other side, the listing agent, sort of facilitate this negotiation, because it all is a negotiation up until closing. And so that's where we excel. And, I think that when you're dealing with realtors, we are not one and the same. The other thing too is when I get calls from people that want to list their property and they just straight up ask you what your commission is. I think that going back to this list, knowing what you're getting, what are you getting for the commission stated by the realtor that you're interviewing? I think you need to meet with the realtor. I think short of a FaceTime, sit with them, try to meet with the agent, see if it's a good fit. But what are you getting for the commission?
Right. Like if they're willing to give up a portion of their commission right off the bat,
that's a red flag.
That's a huge red flag. One, because if they're willing to give up their money that quickly, what makes you think that when it comes time that they're negotiating for you on the most expensive asset generally that you own, that they're going to be going to the wall if they can't even stand up and show you what their value is and why they should be paid the full commission. So I think that that's a really important thing. And I always tell my sellers, look, I'm here to service, to do a job, and I'm going to do it extremely well. But we do all these extra things, and all of the experience that I bring to the table is why I deserve my full commission on this. And if you ask me to discount it, and I've got to
still pay for, we pay for, our time is valuable, and the resources that we use are top notch. And
the question then becomes a question of like, here, let me pull this list out. These are all the things that we do. Would you like me to start crossing all this stuff off? Well, of course not. Of course not. So I tell people right off the bat, if we take a listing, right off the bat, we're spending at least $1,000 to $1,500 right off the bat to shoot photos, put it on the MLS, and that doesn't even account for our MLS fees. It doesn't count. There's a lot of money is spent.
Check out that other video we did about that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of money spent on the front end of listing a property. And so I just think that when an agent discounts themselves, it screams, I'm brand new, I don't have a lot of experience, I don't have a following.
You're not confident
I'm not confident in my ability to get this property sold, and I'm willing to just give you what you want so I can get the listing. But at the end of the day, once I get it, there's not really much.
You might not get a hold of me.
Yeah, you might not get a hold of me because I'm working a full-time job somewhere else. Yeah. So it's critically important that you're working with a full-time agent, and a big telltale sign. Because you can't expect part-time agents to say, oh, well, I just do this part-time. Telltale sign. Call them in the middle of the day and see if they answer their phone. Because if they're working a full-time job doing something else, they're not going to answer your phone call in the middle of the day.
Well, and again, why is this important now? Why are we talking about it?
Sure.
I can't stress it enough right now as we sit at the end of November. And again, we're recapping October because the October numbers aren't done yet. So we had 559 listings end of October. Now, as it sits, 949. And because of that, we have to do all of these things to get your house exposed.
Right.
Now, it might just take longer.
You're competing with almost double the amount of properties that are out there.
Supply and demand. Our supply is up. Now we need to really shine with our marketing.
Right.
And so, there's a lot involved. And I almost get borderline insulted when someone says you just put up in the MLS, I could sell a house. Well, it's so much more than that.
Yeah, and I what I would do is I'd tell them, go to your for sale by owner website and see all the properties that have been sitting there for month after month, because that's all they do.
Yeah.
Or there are listing services. They'll take your $495 and throw it on the MLS.
And you're on your own.
And you're on your own, and good luck.
And that's it. That's all you get.
You're not, the other thing is,
and you have to show your property and negotiate. Oh my gosh,
well, 85% of buyers are represented by agents. And if you think those agents are going to come in and represent their buyer and do all the work for your side, they're not going to do it.
It always ends up, I've done it a time or two, and it always ends up being more work because the seller's calling you.
And they don't know what they're doing. They don't know they don't understand anything about the contract. And so now you're asking me for 3% to do both sides of the work, and I'm not going to do that.
Both sides for half.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, so, I mean, we can keep on. This video could be like 5 hours.
Yeah. So I think that it's really important, though, that, we do go over these statistics every month. And I think it's important to show and understand kind of where the market's going. Mm-hmm. Our market, it doesn't matter how you want to slice this. If you compare it to last year, and especially the year before that, we're slowing down. It is not, properties are not selling in 1 week.
But we're holding firm on the values.
Holding firm on the values.
They're about the same they were last year.
Whereas most of the country, if you look in the Midwest or the Northeast, most property values have come down substantially. Mm-hmm. The market hasn't had these steep declines, though. You look at Chicago, my wife and I own 2 homes in Chicago. The market there is a mess right now. And the property values, especially in the downtown area, are really coming down steeply. We just haven't had those adjustments.
Not at all. Not at all.
So, there may be a couple small adjustments here and there, but for the most part, properties are still selling and selling well here. So it's taking a little bit more time. But the inventory coming up substantially.
That's why we're getting calls from our sellers, even though we stay in really good contact with our sellers. I mean, I take great pride in that. I know you do. You're always keeping them alert and on top of what you're doing, what's not happening, what is happening, pricing. But we take great pride in that. And, my email follow-ups every week, as we kind of taper off, they get less a little bit too. But, I think pricing, I can't say it enough, and I'm sure some of my sellers are over it, but pricing really, really matters.
Yeah, the first 2 or 3 months is your best opportunity to that's when you're going to get the most activity, the most showings, most people are going to come through. By the time you get to the end of that 3-4 months, you've burned through your best opportunities to sell a property.
The buyer that would have maybe bought is long gone.
They're long gone. They've gone and purchased something that was priced properly.
And sellers are always saying, well, they can make an offer. Okay,
they're not going to.
It's very few and far between that a buyer's going to do that, because they're first of all, it's going to be out of their search parameters. Number one, so they're not going to see it.
Right.
And number two, they don't want to insult the seller. And they say that every time almost. And
nobody wants to come in to a property that's listed at $1.6 million and put in a $1.2 million offer, even if the property, that's what it's worth.
A property that's priced well in this market is selling at 96.7% of asking. It's actually the same as it was last year, percentage-wise.
Right. If it's properly priced,
just price it right.
You're gonna transact the property faster. You're not, you're searching for the one person who happens to want just that property, and that just isn't realistic.
And and another thing too, when it's priced high, they're going to say, what's wrong with it? So they're probably going to do an even deeper dive on the inspection.
Right.
Think about it, because they're like, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with this house that's been on the market 200 days? Why hasn't someone scooped it up? Well, it was the price. And if you go in the history, they chase the price down. And so it's like, oh, okay. Now, there are exceptions to this.
But if you're listing at, 20% or 25 or 30% higher than any other property that's sold down the streets priced per square foot, it better be the biggest, nicest, most updated, absolutely nothing needs to be done. It's being sold with the best furniture that you can possibly find.
Floors.
I mean, it's like it better be something really exceptional. If it's not, and it's a regular standard house with standard updates, there's just no way.
We're watching it like
I watch it daily. I think.
Of course you are.
Yeah.
So if you want us to sit down with you and get down to brass tacks, we might not always tell you what you want to hear, but we'll definitely tell you what you need to hear. And sometimes it's just like that tough love conversation that we have to have with buyers too and sellers. So a lot of sellers right now that are, kind of realizing like what's going on, and it's all good. I mean, I've been down this path before. You're very well versed. You know the market.
Right.
And so we're happy to do that in the Sarasota, Manatee, or Charlotte County areas. And I can be reached at 941-544-7690.
And my cell phone number is 941-586-2460. Or you can find me on YouTube at Andrew Reese Luxury. And listen, please subscribe. I'm still dying. I need to build my subscribers.
Subscribe to Andrew's channel.
Please.
Thank you for subscribing to mine. And if you haven't, please subscribe. And thank you for watching.